Hey everyone, this is Andrew from the Jetdocs team, and today I'm excited to go over some integration setup with you, and we'll cover quite a few different things, but essentially there's two main types of integrations that Jetdocs works with. One is inbound and the other is outbound. So just to give you an idea, if we go to the catalog builder, we'll go to this test form and then go to integrations here. When I click on edit template, I have the ability to create an inbound webhook, and then we also have an outbound webhook, and we'll add more event types here, as well as outbound by Zapier. And Zapier supports multiple event types like creating a Jetdocs ticket, when a ticket's edited, if it gets reassigned. Change status is a pretty dynamic one that includes things like if the ticket status goes from in progress to complete, for example, and we can use the filtering option by Zapier here, or if a new comment is left. So when we jump over to the Zapier front, there's a few different things that we can do inside of Zapier's interface. So the first one is let's change the starting trigger app to Jetdocs. And once we've done so, we can then choose the event type. So do we want this to be a new ticket that's created or a new ticket status change? Those are typically the two most common. If we end up using ticket status change, we can use the filter inside of Zapier. So if I type in filter, and so what this basically means, and I'll get rid of these for now, what this means is that when a ticket changes status, so for example, it goes from in progress to complete, we can then use the filter option where we can choose a field in the payload above and say it is an exact match, and then we can map it to the complete status change above here, and then that flow would continue, and then we can send it to whatever other third-party application that we would like. So filter is only, typically needed to be used if we're using this ticket status change. If we're not, and we're just using a new ticket, for example, if we do new ticket listed right here, this is going to automatically get triggered and then push that data to Google Sheets. Now, in terms of actually getting set up, and this type of idea is encapsulates a couple different things. The first is our Jetdocs account, which is represented by our custom API key, which you definitely want to keep secure. And then the second one is a tag, is what we call it. And that's how we know when a ticket is submitted or whatever Jetdocs action is taken, Zapier and our Jetdocs template or ticket are speaking to one another. So let's get started with setting up a new account so you can follow these steps. So I'm going to go to my profile. I'll change this afterwards, but you can see it right now. So I'll copy this key, jump back to Zapier, and click on Account, where we click Select, Connect a New Account, which is going to open up this pop-up where I can add in my API key, and click Yes, Continue to Jetdocs. Now, once I've done so, my account is connected, so Zapier and Jetdocs are now speaking to each other. And then I can go click Continue or click Configure at the top here, and you'll see that there is a tag. Now, the benefits of a tag are that you can have different workflows based on different templates inside of your catalog builder. So for example, I'm going to go to integrations, and you can see that when I clicked edit, clicked add integration, and clicked outbound Zapier, it asked me already for a tag, and I put Jetdocs training in right here. I'm going to click save, and I have this already saved right here. So you can see this is represented. This is case sensitive, and I can then enter that same value here. So now we have Jetdocs connected, and our template is also being referenced correctly. So now I can click continue. So what ends up happening is if I go ahead and actually submit this ticket, so for example, if I type in test form, test, click submit, you'll see here when I go test trigger, I'll retest here, might take a second. You can see that this new ticket was just pulled. So I submitted this ticket. I have a couple just placeholders, fruit 1 and fruit 2. I have test and test. And now this data is referenceable. So then when we go to our next piece where we'd like to create an account inside of Google Sheets, we can then continue along and then reference any of these fields in this particular ticket as responses. So this is one way to go from Jetdocs to another location. Now, what's also interesting is because we also support webhooks, you can use Zapier's webhook functionality to trigger something from a different application. So this would kind of be part 2 of the video. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually go back to setup, and we're going to change the app. So this can be any type of application. I'm just going to use Slack because it has some really good ideas here. So again, this can be in Microsoft Teams as well, but if you're looking at Slack and you have a trigger event, and maybe you want to have, if a new message is posted to a channel, or I believe there's one for a new reaction, like an emoji is added, for example. So say, for example, someone says, hey, I need help with this. Someone adds a caution symbol, for example, to that. I click on this, and again, I can go through that process of setting up my Slack account. And then what I can do is turn this into a webhook. So if I type in webhook by Zapier, we can then say this will be a post request. So what's going to happen is when the Slack event happens, we're going to push something to a webhook, and Zapier is handling a lot of the pieces on the back end for us. So now when we go back to our Jetdocs template, what we're saying here is that this event is going to trigger an action inside of Jetdocs. And when I click on edit, add integration, that would be this inbound webhook, meaning that we're ingesting data here. And so if I clicked on this, you'll see that I already have this one created. Again, there'll be a pop-up, but you'll see right when you're going through this process, there'll be an ID here. You'll have to save this and save the template for this unique URL to appear. You can add a name. And then what we're doing is this is a custom case-sensitive variable that will be referenced inside of the webhook format inside of Zapier. And then this is the fields inside of Jetdocs. So I'll grab this URL here, click save, and then paste that here. Now again, you can go through kind of this process to add in different types of data from the Slack message that is being referenced. So when I click test, you'll then be able to pull that information. And then the one key piece here to note is you'll be adding in your API key. So this is where you're going to put X API key, and where we were previously in my profile, I would copy this key and paste that right here. So once you've done so, you're basically pulling the data payload from Slack, and what we're saying is when we continue down this path and test this workflow, we're going to be ingesting that data right into Jetdocs. So what that might look like, this is just the test form, for example. Use this one right here. So you'll see that this ticket noted by this icon represents an inbound webhook, and the data passed along from an external source, for example, trigger the creation of this Jetdocs ticket and also applied that data internally here. So webhooks can be used with Zapier, but you can also use webhooks, so this will be the exact same flow, inside of Pipedream or Power Automate. So these are two great tools that are very easy and user-friendly to use. But again, this would be a trigger from an external application. So in this case, we have a new row in a Google Sheet. In this particular case, we have when a Microsoft form is submitted. So in this case, Microsoft Forms, new response is submitted. You have to use their action get response details. And then so you can see here, this is the form ID. I've gotten the response ID. And then the webhook details is really where rubber meets the road in terms of setup. So again, it's going to be a post request. We're going to bring in our inbound webhook ID. Power Automate's a little bit less user-friendly because you need to put in this custom kind of data object here where you have your brackets, the name of the key. This is the value being referenced from the form. So this can be dynamic, right? This is being pulled here. If I were to remove this, click on the dynamic function, and you can see that it's pulling it from the steps above. So I've added in Q1. And then the key piece here is, so you have the URL, you have to add in your API key. And so under advanced parameters, there will be something called subscribe headers. You'll check that off, add an X-API-key, and then your API key listed here. And at the top right, you can go ahead and test. The same type of idea inside of Pipedream. Again, we're saying I've connected Google Sheets, and we have a new event type that we're going to be referencing. You can see that I've added banana and apple as the two pieces of information. So kind of a A1 and B1 on a spreadsheet would be those two fruits. And then inside of the HTTP request, so the same type of idea for a webhook where you open this up. That's the HTTP webhook action that I'm using. In here, I've selected post. I've added in my inbound webhook URL. Under authentication, there's nothing. Parameters, there's nothing. Under headers, these first two are by default. And then this is Pipedream's way of adding in your API key. So x-api-key. Here's my API key listed here. And then the most important part is how do you actually map your data. So this is the just unique key that you created, right, inside of Jetdocs. As a reminder, that is just for illustrative purposes. Inbound, that is fruit 1 and fruit 2, so I've just made those up. And then I've added in the value. And so you can see this information is being pulled from my test object above, and I can simply select the path and select the path for 1 and 2 respectively. So once I've done so, I can go ahead and test that, and that should again go ahead and create a inbound webhook listed here. Now the very last point I'll make is, so we've talked about both using Zapier as a Jetdocs event type first, pushing that to somewhere else, or using a third-party application which then pushes into Jetdocs webhook, so kind of two options there. But the other one, which is available, is the outbound webhook. So the only difference, if you remember, on inbound webhooks, we have the JSON mappings where we have our custom variable getting mapped to our Jetdocs field. This is basically in reverse. So if I was going to click outbound webhook, I'd add in a URL. So again, this is where I want to send this data. So a different system would be providing you with this URL. You can add in an optional name. And then instead of having your Jetdocs value on the right-hand side, that gets added here. So the field 1, for example, would then map to a custom key. This is your custom key where I was using fruit 1, fruit 2, and this is what you would map to the other system. So quite a few options available. Hope this is helpful. It's a bit of a lengthy video, but covers quite a few different items. And then we also, in addition to this integrations page, we have our overall Jetdocs API for those technical folks who would like to push large amounts of data to an external system. Great. Appreciate it. Thanks.